us. I am Taylor Summer, marketing manager here at Minoan, and I'm thrilled to host today's session. We're interested, drop in the chat if you're a member of Minoan or StayFi already. We like to see. And for anyone who is actually new to Minoan, we're a free centralized ordering platform that allows hosts, property managers, boutique hotels, designers to furnish and replenish their spaces with top brands on a budget. So I'm excited to introduce today's special guest, Arthur Kolkler. He's the founder and CEO of StayFi, which is the leading Wi-Fi, email, and text marketing solution designed specifically for short-term rental services. Arthur has revolutionized how vacation rental owners collect guest data and increase direct bookings, and now he's here to share those insights with us. Just a few housekeeping items before we get into the good stuff. The chat is open if you want to simply react to any takeaways, but also we will be having a brief Q&A at the end of Arthur's presentation. So feel free to put any burning questions in the chat and we'll get to as many as possible at the end. Everyone is also muted by default, so please remain muted throughout the presentation. So let's get started. Arthur, thank you so much for being here today. It's a pleasure to have you on. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you so you can introduce yourself and get started.
Hey, yeah, thank you, Taylor, and thanks for having me. And so awesome to see so many people engaged and joined on this webinar. So that's a testament to the type of content that you guys have been helping educate your audience with. And today is all about how to develop your own independent brand and start driving more direct bookings. I think we know that there's a lot of short-term rental operators entered this space just listing on Airbnb. And over the last few years, we've seen an explosion in tools, in different ways where people are branching out from just being an Airbnb host to being a true multi-platform host or property manager, where they are starting to see value from developing their own brand and marketing directly to guests. And that's what we're going to talk about in today's presentation. So kind of how to evolve your business and get to the next level when it comes to building your own brand. And just a little more background on StayFi and what we're building here. So we're the leaders in Wi-Fi and guest marketing for short-term rentals. And today, over 60,000 short-term rental properties all over the world use StayFi. And if Wi-Fi marketing is unclear to you, what does that mean? I'll go on to explain that in a second. And then we've helped thousands of operators increase their direct bookings and gain independence from OTAs. So OTA is an online travel agency. That would be Airbnb, Vrbo, Booking.com are the main ones in our space. And we help people figure out how to not only collect guest data, but then how to market to those guests so they come back and book directly with you again and again. And over time, we've seen customers who started with no direct bookings go to have 30-40% of their bookings direct, or folks who are already pretty advanced in the direct booking game even get to a place where they no longer even need to list on Airbnb to get all the bookings they need to fill their calendar. So no matter where you are in that journey, there's going to be useful information in this presentation that can help you start building out that book direct business that is so important to have a thriving, long-standing business that can ride the different ups and downs in the market, because you know you can always go back to your own dedicated audience of guests that love staying with you so they can come back and stay with you directly again and again. So how do you convert guests into repeat bookers? And there's something that I just want to emphasize at the beginning here is that a lot of times in this industry, when you talk about the guest or the guests, we're talking really about the booker. One of the key things about StayFi, or one of the main ways we help folks, is we really expand the world of guests. So we take a look not just at the booker, but everybody staying in your vacation rental property as potential folks who can come back and book your property again or refer you to other guests. So we're going to talk about a bunch of different strategies to not only capture that data, but how to get those folks to come back again and again. So number one is really about making an impression and making an impression with your independent brand. I can tell you, and I'm sure you know, that when people book a short-term rental, 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, I booked an Airbnb. And most guests aren't really familiar with how short-term rentals work. They don't necessarily realize that the reason they have a great stay or a reason why they love this property is due to you, the operator, and not due to Airbnb because they think of it as a quote unquote Airbnb. Obviously, we know this isn't true for hotels, right? So if you book a hotel on booking.com, you know if you're staying at a Hyatt or a Marriott or whatever brand you're staying with. Short-term rentals are a little strange, right? Because when guests book your property, they probably don't know who you are, what you stand for, what your brand is like, if you that you even have a brand or the ability to book direct. So we're going to talk about how you can make an impression and start to educate your guests, not just the booker, on who you are, what makes you different, and why having a direct relationship with you is going to be better for future bookings than going back through a platform like Airbnb. Second piece of this is, of course, collecting guest data. So if you don't have data to reach your guests after they stay with you and during the stay, you're obviously not going to be able to remarket to them. And we know that Airbnb and Vrbo and these platforms don't want to make this easy because they want guests to always go back through them. So they're not going to give you the tools you need to collect that data. And we'll talk about how you can do that in a compliant way that follows all relevant laws and regulations so that you can have all the guest data you need to remarket and do it in the best way possible. Third, of course, is to provide a great experience. So if guests don't love the stay and love staying with you, obviously they're not going to want to come back and they're not going to want to refer you. So that's kind of the baseline here. And we do have some tools that can help enhance the stay for guests. And I'll talk a little bit about that. And then finally, you obviously need to market to let people know that they can come back and they can book directly with you. And one of the key things we'll go into here is how to automate this marketing. I know for a lot of people who are just starting out, the idea of sending a monthly newsletter or coming up with content on a regular basis can seem very intimidating. So I'll talk about some ways where you can set some things up so that they just get sent automatically to everyone that stays with you so they come back and book directly again and again. And then finally, incentives can be a helpful way also to get guests to maybe book off platform for the first time, which we know can be a little scary because some people have some trust factor kind of built into why they're booking with Airbnb. And how can we kind of overcome that where they realize that booking directly is beneficial for everybody involved? So the first part of making an impression is developing your own independent brand and letting guests know that you aren't an Airbnb. And how can you go about and do that? I tell people often to create a memorable, unique brand that represents who you are. You should lean into your strengths. And so, what that means practically is if you are a smaller operator, if you are a family business, if you own the properties that you're operating, I would lean into your brand as is your brand maybe should be represented by you as a person. So, that's really your strength is your ability to have that one-on-one communication with guests, for guests to trust the person behind the stay. And that's where I would really lean into your persona. And maybe you have a name for your property or name for your group of properties, but really push who you are as an operator in that messaging. As you grow, it may become beneficial to switch from having a very one-on-one or persona-based brand into having one that's more standardized. So if you go look at larger vacation rental operators, typically they have a brand that's more corporate. They're really more leaning into things like consistency and standards across property and to representing who their team is, right? So I think starting out, really making you the center of the brand can be a really great way to start that doesn't require you to build a lot of assets and collateral. And then over time, if you are still growing, you might want to lean more into like a corporate or traditional brand or something you would more think of when you think of like a normal company that you would associate with a brand, right? The other part of this is how do you develop your digital presence? And the first part I would say is building a website for your company. One great thing that's happened in the last few years is that every property management software out there makes it very easy to build a website. So that's typically the first software that people are going to go and acquire when they start operating a short-term rental. The property management software is what you would use to list on all the OTAs and then, of course, launch your own website. So, some common ones we see people use are things like Guesty, OwnerRez, Hospitable, Hostaway. There are many out there. And what's great is that they all now have a direct booking product. So it's very easy to launch your own website, get a contractor to, let's say, put a logo together for you, whether through Upwork or Fiverr, and then start to build out uh, what your direct booking brand stands for. And if you're smaller, definitely putting yourself at the center of that brand about why you started this business, who you are, why you care about guests, what your approach to hospitality is. All of that is going to be really important to start educating guests around who you are and that you're not just a quote unquote Airbnb. And at the end, if you have questions about how to go about doing that, happy to dive into that into more detail. Next is once you have, figured out a basic brand for your business, what you stand for, why guests should care about who you are, let's say have a direct booking website for the first time, then the next step is to start capturing that guest data so that you can follow up with guests. And the first place that you will already have some data is in your property management software. And one great thing about StayFi is that we will connect with your PMS to extract any marketable data out of that tool that you can use in email marketing. So while you may not get a email from, let's say, Airbnb bookings, there are some other channels where you may be able to get the email from the booker, as well as any direct bookings that you've ever captured or any emails you've ever added to your PMS manually. So one of the things that is great when you set up StayFi is that we will connect to your PMS, look through all your reservations, and import any real emails from any past guests that have stayed with you. And that can give you a great starting place when it comes to doing email marketing, which we think is the best way to start following up with guests to have them come back and book with you directly. The second piece, which I'll talk to more in a second, is through the Wi-Fi. This is StayFi's primary product, is we let you set up a captive portal, something you've experienced at a hotel or an airport, where essentially every guest that joins the Wi-Fi will have to enter their information in order to get on the Wi-Fi. Something I'm sure you've done at a hotel or a Starbucks. And this way, on the captive portal, you can not only collect this data, but also introduce your brand for the first time. And in that way, we will collect emails, phone numbers, names, not just from the booker, but all guests staying with you. So you can expect if you have 10 guests staying in a property, we'll collect 8 or 9 emails from that whole group of guests during the course of their stay. So you can really supercharge the ability to create a marketing list and reach out to these folks again and again. And then finally, when you do have a website, it's also important to collect data there from anybody who's potentially interested in booking a stay with you. And through StayFi, we also have the ability to set up things like sign up forms, pop ups, so that any traffic that is being sent to your website, we can also help capture data there. So that way you can follow up with them right away to hopefully get them to book one of your properties directly with you. This is just a little more information about what capturing data through the Wi-Fi looks like from the guest's perspective. So with StayFi, it's a very simple process for guests. It's something that they have experienced in all sorts of hospitality environments before, so it's something new or foreign to them. Is first they would select the guest Wi-Fi network, which we help you set up. When they select that network, this is what the captive portal looks like. Obviously, it would be customized with your branding, and it can even be specific by property. So if you operate 5 or 10 properties, it can have the name of the home, an image specific to that home, and whatever messaging you'd like to welcome them. And then below, they enter their name, email, and then you can add other fields like phone number, birth date, other information you want to know about your guests. And then once they hit connect, we actually have a second page for them called the home page, which we'll talk a bit about in the next few slides. This is kind of like a link tree for your listing. So on this homepage, you can have links to all sorts of important resources, whether it's a digital guidebook, a PDF guidebook, a link to book this property again, as well as upsells through some of our partners. So you can link to any third-party store where someone would want to make a purchase, as well as other upsells or tours and activities through a partner like Viator. And that way you can actually help drive more revenue per stay and also advertise some of your favorite things to do in the area to your guests to also enhance the quality of their stay. So it's a win-win for both you and your guests when you can provide those types of recommendations and also make revenue if the guest books any of them. And then finally, this homepage is also shareable through our marketing tools. So you can send it in an SMS or an email so guests can have access to it during the whole course of their stay or even before the stay if you choose to share it then. And this way, through this process, not only are we collecting the data, but we're starting to really reinforce in the guest's mind that you're not a quote unquote Airbnb, but you're an independent operator with all sorts of additional services and offerings that go beyond what a standard quote unquote Airbnb would offer. So they start to remember that you go above and beyond for your guests and that there are advantages to perhaps booking with you directly in the future. Here again, just to kind of tie up the last few slides, is what are the steps to build a direct booking business? Number one is, again, having that digital presence or a website, which I would definitely recommend doing through your property management software to begin with. This is a website for a company that uses Logify. So, this is one of the Logify websites. Every tool has now these kind of white labeled websites that you can set up. Many of them, like Hospitable, even have additional services bundled in that service. So if you're worried about insurance, guest screening, payment processing, all of those things that could be a little intimidating when it starts to and when it comes to starting to take bookings directly, they have a lot of those services bundled in, so you can be assured that these bookings are covered just as much as an Airbnb booking would be covered, or perhaps even better than what AirCover has to offer, right? So direct bookings can just be as secure. It can have all the screening you need to make sure that they're a safe type of booking. So you're not worried that taking bookings outside of Airbnb might expose you to additional liability. And they can actually even be better protected if you have the right services set up. The second is reinforcing that you're an independent brand across several touch points. Of course, we offer this Wi Fi part of the experience, which can introduce your brand at Wi Fi login and again through emails, text, the homepage product. But there are other ways that we see hosts and operators place their brand in the listing itself, perhaps in a more physical way. So that would be things like branded items that guests are interacting with on a regular basis. That could be beach towels, that could be mugs, fridge magnets, very simple things just to start differentiating in the mind of the guest about who your brand is so they remember you. And it's going to take perhaps, could be 8+ kind of impressions for a guest to kind of fully internalize that you're an independent company and that you're not just an Airbnb. And then finally, providing unique recommendations or services to guests is a great way to also differentiate yourself from a typical Airbnb operator. And through our partners, we have different ways to source third party activities and other services that you can recommend to guests so they can have an even better and high quality stay with you. One place which I'll talk a little bit more about now is what to do with when it comes to recommending third-party services. So in StayFi, like I mentioned, we have this homepage product, which is like a link tree for your properties. On here, you can have things like a guidebook, a link to book your property again, a link to your website, and then third-party amenities and services. We have two partners built into the product, one called Viator, one called the Hostco. And the Hostco is a great place if you're interested in selling your own services. So things that you can sell there are things like early check-in, late checkout, stay extensions, mid-stay cleans, and then they also have a host of third-party provided services as well. So if you have any types of additional services that you want to offer your guests, that's a great thing to include there, and then you can advertise them on this homepage. And then, of course, you can create custom buttons here and link guests to anything else. I see a lot of real estate companies that also operate short term rentals market their real estate services here. I've seen one even do, $5,000 credit off your next booking if you purchase a home with us, right? So I see lots of interesting ways that people are taking the ability to engage every single guest during the stay through a product like this to market those other businesses or services that they're involved with. And that's very easy to do through this product to make sure you're getting those things in front of every guest that stays with you, not just the booker. Here's a little more detail on our two built-in partners, but of course you can use the custom buttons to link to any other partners. The first is the host code. This is example of what that store looks like. The host code is a free partner through StayFi, so building one of these stores is totally free. And you can see here are some of the services that you can offer guests, things like early check-in and late checkout, which are very popular and are ways that we see operators earn, hundreds or thousands of dollars extra a month on top of the cost of the booking. And the second is Viator. Viator is the largest tour and activity marketplace in the world, and you can earn an 8% commission through recommending these tours and activities. Through StayFi, we set you up on the Viator affiliate platform, and you can share these tours and activities not just through StayFi, but also through, let's say, pre-stay messaging. So we see a lot of folks send automated messaging prior to the stay to the booker, letting them know, hey, here are my favorite things to do in the area. And if the guest goes and clicks through those and makes a booking, you'll get 8% of that booking revenue. And that way, again, you're providing useful recommendations in a way that also helps you generate additional revenue. And that can really elevate the guest experience and know that you take personal care in making sure they have a great time. And again, will increase the chances that they want to come back and stay with you again because you offered that higher level of service to guests. Once guests have a great stay with you, you've offered perhaps maybe these additional services and recommended tours and activities that you love. Then, once the guest leaves, it's important to establish that basis of communication through a consistent series of messages, whether it's through email or SMS, to make sure guests stay engaged and that when they are ready to book that trip again, you are top of mind so they will come directly to your website. And the two main channels that we have in StayFi for you to do this is email and SMS. I'm going to talk a lot about email marketing and give you a lot of useful tips for how to get started. SMS is a little simpler in terms of the content you send because it's just a text message. The great thing about SMS is that these messages have 80 or 90+% read and open rates. So you can make sure that every time you send a message to your guests, they're going to see it. And so, one great thing about having a SMS tool that lets you reach all your past guests is that you can send them things like last minute offers or availability. So, some great examples of how I've seen people leverage SMS messaging is they have a last minute cancellation, and I actually saw this with one customer. Someone canceled for a Thanksgiving booking a few weeks in advance. They sent an SMS message back to all the past guests that had opted in for text marketing, and they said, hey, we have a last minute opening for Thanksgiving because of a cancellation. Let me know if you're interested in booking. And they got someone who booked that home that same day after sending that message. So SMS is a great way to send very high value content to your subscribers to get them to rebook specific dates or openings in your calendar. So whether that's a last minute weekend stay, you notice something isn't booked. And this is a great way also, and I'll talk about this more with email, is that one of the things we see a lot of operators do is as dates approach, they start to cut their rates on OTAs to try to fill them and not have, open time and, not have their occupancy rate drop, right? So they start cutting rates. SMS and email are great ways to send targeted marketing around dates that are open in your calendar to get people to book them further in advance at, the rate you would prefer. So you're not just cutting rates in a last minute effort to get those bookings through OTAs, because that's the tendency we see a lot of folks do to kind of try to keep their occupancy rate higher is sacrificing on their rates. And so building your own audience is really the number one way to make sure you secure those bookings further in advance before you have to do that. These are the most common types of email marketing campaigns we see people send through StayFi, because that's definitely the number one question people have when it comes to starting email marketing. marketing is what do I send? And we have great guides that walk you through how to build all of these things, but I'll just touch upon them briefly right now. The first is a guest Wi-Fi welcome series. So obviously, when a guest signs into the Wi-Fi at your listing, we want to start marketing them immediately to again drive that differentiation between Airbnb and your own brand. And in StayFi, you can set up not just one email, but a series of email that automatically gets sent to every guest after they log into the Wi-Fi. So right when they log in, and then let's say again in 5 days, 15 days, 20 days, whatever you would like. And the key things that people place in these emails is starting out. Again, if it's when they arrive in the listing, it's really about value add for the stay. So these are our recommendations, introducing yourself and your independent brand. Then further on, it can lean a little bit more into that rebooking messaging. I think one of the key things to note here is that with short-term rentals, most people have lower rates directly than they do through OTAs because OTAs are tacking on those additional fees. A lot of folks will even drive that price differentiation a little higher where they're marking up Airbnb and Vrbo rates even higher than they have through their direct channel. And that's one of the most awesome things about this industry is that you can advertise to your guests that booking direct will be less expensive than booking through a third-party channel. That's actually not possible for most hotels because they have these agreements called rate parity where they can't undercut like booking.com with their own rates on their website. That doesn't exist for short-term rentals. So we actually have a huge leg up versus hotels when it comes to driving direct bookings because you can consistently message the value to your guests of booking direct and that they will have lower rates and that you will actually end up with more revenue in the end because you can share that 15% on average fee that the OTA is collecting between you and the guests. So you can still collect more revenue at the end of the day, even though the rate is lower than what's listed on an OTA, which is pretty awesome. So all the, advantages on your side when it comes to giving that message of value to guests, and that's definitely the most common message we see emphasized across all campaigns is that booking direct will cost less. When it comes to the next campaign, which is when someone signs up on your website for a newsletter, again, that's the number one thing we see when we go to folks' websites and we test out what they're doing today in email. 9 times out of 10, you sign up for their newsletter and you don't get anything. And then maybe when they send the next monthly newsletter, you'll get your first email. You are missing out on a great opportunity to start engaging those guests or engaging your website visitors by making sure you automate an email when they sign up for a newsletter. The other issue is if you don't automate an email here, when you do send that newsletter in, let's say, 2 weeks, they may have forgotten they signed up for it and they'll unsubscribe or mark it as spam. So it's just really important that when you do add newsletter sign up to your website, that you trigger an email to that guest or to that website visitor, and you can put promotional items in there, or you can just again introduce them to your brand, provide like a guide to your area, things like that. It doesn't even need to be a discount. And that way, they're more likely to be engaged with future emails that you do send them. Another fantastic automation that we have people set up in StayFi is a booking anniversary email. This one has one of the highest conversion rates. It's very easy to set up. You just pick, you look at what your average um, window of time between a booking and a stay. So let's say it's 2 months. And at 10 months from collecting a guest email, you can trigger an email to that person 10 months post stay saying, hey, you stayed with us 10 months ago. If you want to come back, you better secure your booking now, or else it may fill up. And we know a lot of destinations have this annual type of travel, whether it's ski, beach, Hawaii, resorts in Mexico. We see all of these areas. Annual travel is a big part of their business, and they have folks that come back every year. Setting up this booking anniversary email is a huge, huge way to make sure that you're capturing that repeat guest traffic to your destination. Just because it's been 9 months or 8 months that they stayed with you, they might have gotten some email newsletters from you. They might just by instinct go to Airbnb to start this search. And this is a really key time you want to push to that guest a reminder that not only do you have great inventory in the area they love to travel to, but you can offer them a better price than if they book your property through an OTA. And so an anniversary email is key to driving that repeat traffic. Post-departure drip, again, this just builds off the Wi-Fi welcome series. Obviously, you want to introduce your brand, provide value at login, but then 30 days post-stay, 60 days post-stay, you can follow up with those guests and make sure they're, giving you 5-star reviews. They can fill out surveys, and then of course you can keep reminding them that booking direct for the next day will be less expensive for them. And then finally, I touched upon this on the last slide, is availability-based emails and SMS. So if you're on the smaller side and you have a really good pulse on what your calendar looks like, and you can see the specific dates that are available, let's say in the next month or 2 months, I would recommend sending emails or texts around these dates. Why is that so important is that if you just send email marketing to your audience saying, book with us, book with us, book with us, but you only have 3 properties and they're completely booked for the next 6 months, guests will be, or potential guests will be disappointed because they're coming to your website, doing a search or looking at your inventory and not finding the ability to book anything, right? And then they're going to be like, oh, going through an OTA is better because I have this huge selection of inventory and I can find something for the dates that I want to travel for. By sending the dates that you have available in an email or a text, if you have less available dates in the near future, that way you're kind of already screening for the folks that are interested in traveling for that period of time. And we know so many of us operate in drive-to markets where people can do last-minute trips. This is a great one for if you have limited availability to really target those dates that are still available and make sure that you're getting guests to come to the website or come email you directly for the availability that you have so that you can fill those nights and get your occupancy rate even higher. Here's an example of what a monthly newsletter can look like that you send through StayFi. I talked a lot before here, welcome series, post-departure trip, availability-based emails. These are kind of what we recommend at the beginning, right? Because you can automate a series of 6 emails sent from login over the next, 6 months. Then you can have a availability automation, and all of that just requires one-time setup and will be sent on a regular basis. Once you get to 1,000-ish emails in your database, that's where it might be beneficial to start putting together monthly content that you send out to your whole list, right? So start with automations. Then once your list gets to a certain size, then it's worthwhile to invest more time in something like a monthly newsletter. Here's an example of what people are putting in a monthly newsletter. Number one, this particular company, they always start with a blog post. So if you have content that you're writing on your website, uh, obviously advertising that in a newsletter is a great idea. What I think is interesting here is that the second item below, which is kind of cut off here, 5-star property management services, they are consistently advertising in their emails the fact that they are a property manager and are looking to actively grow their portfolio. This is so important because you're growing this audience of past guests. Those are often the type of people who eventually purchase a property in your market. And so letting them know that you are A, a high quality property manager, and B, can be trusted to manage their investment is a great way to also start getting the idea in people's mind that you can also manage their property. And also meet people that sign up for your newsletter on your website, right? You don't know if they are a current owner or a potential guest. So integrating the messaging, if you are a property manager, into your emails is a great way to start driving and getting more potential home leads as well as potential bookings. And then finally here, they're leaning into what makes them special and makes them differentiated from a traditional quote unquote Airbnb is that they offer some additional services above and beyond what you would expect. Something like personal chef and catering, help people book, boats or other activities in the area, help them set up and advise them to, go which events. So if you offer any sort of advice or services that go beyond traditional short-term rental, an email newsletter is a great way to feature those. Other things that work really well in this type of content are obviously featuring things like local events. So if you have concerts in your area, Formula One races, annual events that happen in your area, of course, feature them in your newsletter. Another thing people love is property announcements, especially if you work with some interesting or very, fantastic homes. Featuring those in your newsletters are a great way to get interest from guests that are very attracted to this like new property that you're managed. And then finally, of course, always emphasizing that booking direct is preferable than booking through an OTA because maybe you can provide extra services or the price is just generally less expensive. Here again, you can see kind of what makes an email engaging. I would say sending on a regular basis is one of the most important things, right? Like having that monthly cadence means that your brand is in the consumer's inbox and they will remember it when they're ready to book a trip. Uh, I would lean into your strengths. So, obviously, if you are managing fantastic homes or own fantastic homes, feature what makes those homes architecturally interesting. If it's more, maybe you operate condos, but it's in an amazing ski destination, then obviously lean into maybe the condos are less visually interesting, but your destination is amazing, right? So lean into your strengths. And then, of course, if you are a smaller operator and your persona is maybe the more center of your brand, I would maybe want to talk a little bit more about yourself, your love of hospitality, who you are, why you're doing this, so that folks can connect a little bit with more of you as the operator. And then that's the reason why they want to return is because they remembered this person operates this property and they want to recommend you, maybe not the brand per se. Finally, I'll talk a little bit about incentives, which are a great way to build loyalty. So a lot of folks, they simply say booking direct is less expensive than booking through an OTA, which is a great place to start. But then we see some things that go above and beyond that have been really successful. So one thing is if you do have kind of gap nights or orphan nights in your calendar that are available that you don't think are going to book through an OTA, or you'd have to cut your prices a lot to get those booked there, I would offer that discount first to your loyal audience, right? Or to guests that have stayed with you before that you love and trust. So if you do have a last minute cancellation or you see you have 3 nights in August still that are not booked, go and advertise that to your audience of past guests first before you provide that discount to the general public or you cut your rates, right? Another interesting one that kind of is stolen from the hotel world is free extra nights on longer stays. So if you want to get more longer stays booked, for whatever operational reasons, seasonal reasons, you can say, book 7 nights, get one free, and you can offer that just to through your website or to the guests that have stayed with you before. If you can operationalize things like late checkout, early check-in, those are also things that if you offer them for free, can incentivize that direct booking without having to sacrifice on rates. So that's another way is if you have different services that you offer, like a mid-stay clean if your booking is so long, right? There are different ways where maybe you can keep your rates a little closer to the OTA rate or even equivalent, where instead you're offering other services outside of just a lower rate if you want to keep them at parity, which I know some people do want to do. And that another thing for that is complementary activities. So maybe you want to keep your rates very close to the price on Airbnb, but only directly do you get, you know, a free XYZ through one of your partners or a service that you offer, right? Or things like late checkout, early check-in. So that's another strategy. I see that more with large property managers where they actually keep the rates pretty close to the OTA rates directly, but they're offering these free incentives activities for direct bookings. That is why they consistently market that to their audience so that people remember that booking direct, they get this item of value that may be lower cost to provide than just offering a discount on your rates. So what benefits can you expect? Kind of what is the realistic expectation if you haven't done this kind of direct marketing before and you are maybe starting out as completely 100% only getting booked through Airbnb and Vrbo? It's definitely a more medium to long term investment, right? It's not something that happens overnight. Definitely, again, just to cover, first step is to build a website or have a direct booking website through your PMS, and then you can move on from there. A lot of people also have success through one-on-one emails. So even if you don't have a website, right, you could still write people emails like from you personally and have them respond to book directly, right? That's a way to kind of like get started a little faster. But over time, the goals at the end of the day is to increase your overall occupancy rate. The obvious starting place there is orphan nights or things that you see available at the last minute, and then also increasing your share of direct bookings versus third-party bookings. Um, some kind of things like what do we see typically is if you start at 0% direct bookings, by the end of year one, we see people typically where now their share of bookings that are coming directly can be anywhere between 10 and 30%, depending on how much data they're collecting and how well they're advertising their brand. And then over time, we see that share typically increase by like 10 to 15% a year. Where at year 3, year 4, you may now get 50, 60% of your bookings directly. And that's going to have a transformational impact on your business, not just because you're going to save on OTA fees and have an overall higher occupancy rate. It also means you can weather the storms of getting a property banned for some reason out of your control in Airbnb, right? One of the OTAs changes their algorithm where now your properties are ranked lower. Maybe there's now way more competition in your area on an OTA, right? So building that direct audience that you're marketing to not just has these kind of monetary benefits, but also just makes your business more resilient because you can weather challenges or problems that come through the OTA channels that are totally out of your control. And I think that's really the main reason people lean into Book Direct is because they've seen or experienced these challenges through third-party websites, and they just don't want to have their business at risk because some third-party channel changes their rules or how they treat one of their properties. And with that, I hope everyone found this presentation valuable. I know we covered a lot of different types of content, whether it was websites, SMS, email marketing. They're all an important part of building your own brand and starting to market to guests. If you're interested in learning about StayFi and what we have to offer, you can go to stayfi.com and we have a demo page where you can book a demo, a one-on-one demo with one of our reps. You also can just go ahead and sign up for StayFi and dive into the platform, and that is more your speed. And if you want to get 50% off the first 3 months of StayFi, when you sign up for StayFi, there's a promo code area, and you can enter in Minoan. And now I think we can open up for questions. So
Just to answer, I know we've seen a lot of people ask about getting a recording of this. We will be sending up a follow-up email later today with a recording of this presentation and also reminder of this code to so you guys can get 50% off your first 3 months. So let's see. Caitlin says, how are we capturing guest data without breaking protocol? Was it just through the Wi-Fi or were there more methods?
yeah, so there's 3 main methods that we see people do this with. One is through the property management software. So obviously, if you have an Airbnb booking, right, you cannot ask them, like it won't even let you if you try, but you shouldn't and you can't ask them through Airbnb for their email, right? So that's where the big challenge is. Obviously, if you got a booking directly, you probably captured their email. So we see people get emails that way. And so they may have some emails in their property management software. The second one is on the website. Obviously, if people visit your website and they fill out a form, you can collect their email. And the final one, which is obviously the service we provide or our main service, is through the Wi-Fi. When the guest joins the Wi-Fi and gets that form where they enter in their name and email to get access to the Wi-Fi, it's there that they can opt in or out of email marketing. So that while they always have to give an email to get online, typically most operators, it's very customizable. We will have a box that's pre-checked that says you are agreeing to be marketed to by you as the operator and you own all the data you collect through us. And then once the guest joins, then you have the right to market to them, through our services or through third-party services like MailChimp or any other tool you want to connect to StayFi. You can also do it that way as well.
Luke was asking about just kind of metrics in general and like tracking people unsubscribing and stuff. Do you want to just talk a little bit about like metrics in the back end of StayFi in general?
Yep. So in StayFi, I tried to talk not that much about StayFi and more about how to do marketing in general and not make it too salesy. But in StayFi, we have two products that you can subscribe to. One is the Wi-Fi data collection. So you can collect data through using our Wi-Fi tools and use any third-party tool that you want to do the emailing. So if you already love MailChimp, you can just connect our Wi-Fi tool to MailChimp and you can send data there and then you handle all the marketing there. But within StayFi, we also have a full service email marketing tool. And in there, you can do all the things you would expect in a tool like that and that you see in a tool like MailChimp or Constant Contact, where you can see for each email the unsubscribe rate, the open rate, the click-through rate. You can see who your most engaged contacts are, the people that most frequently open and engage with your emails. And then typically, the open and click-through rate of an email is going to depend a lot on when the email is sent. And I'll give an example of that is when you send the Wi-Fi welcome email, for instance, once a guest joins the Wi-Fi, because it's at a very specific trigger, those emails have very high open and engagement rates. Could be 50, 60, 70, 80%, with click-through rates of 5+%, which is ginormous. Then when it comes to something like a standard monthly newsletter, then you're going to be more around the average, which is going to be like 20 to 30% open rate and a click-through rate between like 0.5 and 1.5%. So, you know, all of that data is available in our email marketing tool, but you're going to see very different levels of engagement depending on when you send the email, which is why we always recommend starting with those automated emails first, because sending an email at Wi-Fi login and then 10 days out and 30 days out, that's the type of email marketing that's going to get the best bang for your buck in terms of open engagement rate and educating the guests ultimately about your brand and why booking direct for the next trip is what they should be doing. And then booking anniversary also has very high engagement rates. So sending that email 8, 9, 10 months post stay and letting them know that, if they want to come back, now's the time to book. Those also have above average open engagement rates, and you can see that all in StayFi.
Awesome. So Natasha says, is it worth it to get StayFi if I only have one STR outside of the city center? I'm currently 70 to 75% booked in the summer through Airbnb.
I would say yes, because to give a little more background, StayFi, to set up StayFi, there's kind of two pieces. If you want to do the Wi-Fi piece, one is you purchase a device from us called an access point that you plug into your router, which will broadcast a guest network that provides the splash page. That can cost between $100 and $200 between what model you buy. And then there's a monthly subscription. So if today, that's going to be between $5 and $15 a month per property, depending on how many you have. In a case where you, let's say, are 75% booked through the summer and you own the property, right? So you're not a property manager. So one incremental booking that you would not have got, all the benefit goes to you, right? Because you own the property. It's only going to take probably one incremental booking to more than pay for StayFi, both the device and the subscription, right? So if you have availability, even with one property, you could be collecting 300 to 500 emails a year, if not more, depending on the size. And then, you can set up a few automations, remarket your property, send a text message, let's say to all your past guests, letting them know about like, hey, these are still our unbooked nights. And and then you will most likely, of course, we can't promise anything, but in my experience, you will most likely be able to fill some of those unbooked nights. And that will more than pay for StayFi several times over each year that you use our service.
Perfect. And then someone else was asking, can you touch a little bit more on whenever you have the like splash page for the Wi-Fi? What I know you like had some things like some partners that automatically can go on there, but what other things and assets can people upload? I think they were specifically asking about like maybe a document or a PDF. Like what other things can you upload onto that Wi-Fi page?
Yes. So the guest logs into the Wi-Fi and then we redirect them to the home page. On the home page, you can create buttons that either have a link or an uploaded PDF, which would be the most common thing. So we have always a guidebook link, which of course, if you don't have anything, it won't appear. But if you have either a digital guidebook like a TouchStay or Hostfully, or just a PDF guidebook, you can upload it there, and then the guidebook button will appear, and then the guest can access the guidebook. And then if you have any partner stores, you can also link to those. So if you have any other provider where you have different services or offerings, you can link to there through a custom button. The two built-in upsell partners that are free are the Hostco and Viator. And then the Hostco, like I mentioned before, has some third-party services, but the main way people make money is through selling their own. The most popular ones just being early check-in and late checkout. You might be wondering, early check-in, how does that work if they're only getting there when they log into the Wi-Fi? That homepage is a standalone website that you can link to any other time. So what people do is in their pre-stay automated messaging through their property management software, they will send to the booker, if you want to purchase early check-in, go to this link, and then you can link to either your Hostco store or to our homepage product, and then the guests can go ahead and request that service and then charge them if you're able to fulfill it. So a lot of those upsells are while we advertise them on the homepage, it's also good to send them obviously in advance of the booking because some require some advanced planning. And then through our text tool, you can also send the link to the homepage when the guest logs on to the Wi-Fi. So in our SMS tool, you can trigger a text when someone joins the Wi-Fi and then link dynamically to the homepage for that property. Because we know that guests see the homepage when they're logging on to the Wi-Fi. Often they may look at it then, but then they move on to the next thing and then they can't get back there that easily. So then we would recommend texting it to every guest so that then they have it on their phone for the whole stay. It can go back there to purchase any of those third-party services or go to your website or access the guidebook, anything else you want to put there.
Perfect. Great. I think that pretty much covers all of the questions. Oh, someone said, how can you text the guide after?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So in our SMS tool, it's like merge fields or dynamic fields where you can text the guest um, a field that is associated with a link for each property. So I didn't explain that the best. Basically, for each property, you can define a guidebook link and a homepage link, which we create for you. So when they join the Wi-Fi, you set up a message in StayFi that looks something like, "Hi, first name, welcome to property name. Here's a link to either the guidebook or the homepage," and we'll dynamically insert the guidebook or homepage that's associated with the property that the guest is in. And that way you can text it to everybody right upon login.
perfect. That's awesome. And Dawn was asking about whenever you're customizing, all your assets through StayFi, do you guys allow video uploads as well, or just photos for background right now?
Just photos.
Okay.
Honestly, when it comes to something like, I'll explain why. Like the splash page, when the guest loads the splash page, right? We need that to be as fast as possible. Also the homepage. So when you add things like videos, it just makes the loading take longer, and we want the process to be very snappy, where you join the Wi-Fi and the splash page appears basically immediately. So we try to keep it pretty lightweight so that like we can load those assets and get people on the Wi-Fi as fast as possible. Because the last thing we would ever want to do is create complaints or add any barriers for people getting online, other than just obviously collecting their email and name.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And then let's see. Someone says, is there a way to break out emails by property or region so we can send specific blasts to targeted markets? My properties are spread out all over the country.
Yes. So in StayFi, we have kind of two levels. One is property group and one is property. So every guest is associated to a property group and a property. Property groups are typically things like cities, markets, states. So we have people, they operate in Savannah, Charleston, and New Orleans. So they have three groups, and then within that group, all the properties. And that way, when they send an email, they can do it on the property level or the property group level. So they could send an email blast to the Savannah audience, the New Orleans audience, and the Charleston audience, or they can send emails even by property, but that's getting pretty complicated if you have a ton of properties, right? So I find the property group segments are the most used because you can target by market and you can see which guest stayed in which property and in which market as well.
Okay, perfect. I think we're about there on time. So thank you everyone so much for attending and being engaged and asking all these questions. Like I said, we will be following up with an email after this with the recording and then of course the StayFi promo code. Arthur, thank you so much for being here. This was awesome. And yeah, we will follow up and we'll be available for any additional questions afterwards as well. So thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you soon.
I dropped my own email in the chat. So if anyone has anything they want to direct my way or something they didn't feel comfortable asking everyone else, just shoot me an email and either I'll get back to you or get you the right person if maybe you need a little like a demo or something.
Yeah, same with Minoan. We have the marketing@minoan.com email as well. So we're here. All
So
right. Thanks, everyone.
thank you.
Bye.